Good evening. I'm Michael Sitton, and I'm only the latest in a number of deans of the Crane School of Music that have served during the 50-year tenure of James Pietrzak, which we celebrate tonight. It's a pleasure to welcome you. The Crane School, or any school, is in some respects a place, a location, a building. It is, of course, much more than that, and I'd say mostly more than that. It's mostly, I think, it's people. It's faculty, it's students, it's former students. On the back of your program is an impressively long list of current and former students who are with us tonight. I'm sure they are enjoying being back in this place and in this building, but above all, they're here because of their respect for a faculty member and their connections to him and to each other. The evidence of a teacher's success is in the impact made on the lives of students after they leave that teacher's classroom or studio. This impressive number of former students have come back to honor Jim Pietrzak from the full extent of his teaching career, from a very wide range of careers as teachers, performers, business people, innovators, creators, and from not only all over New York, but all over the world. Their successes are part of his legacy, as I'm sure every one of them would agree, and their presence here is evidence of his success and of the way in which he was deemed a number of years ago to merit the State University of New York's highest faculty rank as SUNY Distinguished Teaching Professor. Welcome to all of you. There are a lot of people to thank for this program without taking much more time from the thing we've come here to do, and that's celebrate with percussion music. I would like to mention a few names beyond those of the performers listed on your program. These include from SUNY Potsdam Crane Facilities Manager Lorelei Murdy, her stage crew, and Sarah Burgess in her office, piano technician Lane Miller, Mona Vroman, alumni director, Alex Wilkie in public relations, from Brick and Mortar Music, Jeremy and Allison Carney, the Yamaha Corporation and Ian Woodica, Innovative Percussion, George Barrett, Sergio Bonsignore and Paul Pearl with Daddario, Remo, and Promark, Chad White for t-shirt design and Northern Printing for providing t-shirts, Scott LaVine, Crane alumnus and emeritus faculty for providing comments during the program, Pacey's for assistance with the reception, and Sergi's Restaurant for contributing food, John Letty, James Pietrzak, all our percussion alumni and current Percussion Alley members, and of course, JP. I'd like to acknowledge particularly two Percussion Alley alumni, Ashley Trudell and John Bird, for their diligent work in bringing an idea to fruition. They devoted a great deal of time and energy to coordinating the many complex strands of this event and deserve special thanks. This event truly was an idea originating from and brought to reality by alumni of the Crane Percussion Studio. Please join me in thanking all these contributors. Please remember that there is a reception following the performance in the Knowles Conference Center just across the street from the Performing Arts Center. The reception will be on the second floor of Knowles. I hope that you'll join us there for food, music by Crane's Giroux Honors Jazz Combo, which we also thank, and conversation. However, I've been asked to request that before they go to the reception, all Percussion Alley alumni please come on stage after the last piece for a photo before you go over. Join me now in welcoming to the stage the conductor of the Crane Wind Ensemble, Dr. Brian Doyle, to lead in a performance of the Varese Hyperprism.
Good evening, and let me also welcome you to James Pietrzak's 50th anniversary concert. I am Scott LaVine. I was in the class of 1971 and also finished my master's in 72, former professor here at Crane. And Ashley and John asked me if I might be a master of ceremonies and share some memories, testaments, and stories that alumni have shared in person or through social media about an individual who has influenced the lives of hundreds of Crane musicians and made an overwhelming impact on the world of percussion. So let me take you back. It was the fall of 1968. I was still 18 years old and walking into my first lesson of sophomore year at Crane when in walks this tall dude in a black suit, a white shirt, a narrow black tie, black horn-rimmed glasses, and short crop blonde hair. That was my first introduction to James Peterzak, the new percussion instructor at Crane. I think most of us majors at the time were feeling a little apprehensive that our former teacher, Sandy Felstein, had left to pursue his doctorate. We quickly found out that our new teacher was an amazing drum set player with incredible speed and technique and knew more about percussion ensemble than just about anyone in the business. Fast forward 50 very quick years, and here we all are celebrating an amazing career. It's indeed rare for anyone to spend 50 years on the job, especially in the same place. And who would have thought that an urban New Jersey kid who grew up, studied percussion at Henry Adler's in the city would come to Potsdam, much less than ever spend this much time in rural northern New York. The list of hundreds of alumni that you can see, not only on the back page, but all of the many other hundreds of alumni, reflect the legacy and diversity of outstanding teachers, college professors, deans of music, symphony percussionists, music business professionals, CEOs of corporations, world-renowned jazz and rock drummers, marimba players, vibists, and at least one lawyer out there, I think. In the process, JP developed a unique studio at Crane and a fraternal network of individuals who supported each other through peer teaching, through collaboration, and who remained connected through a network that JP helped create way beyond graduation from Crane. Throughout the years, JP found the support to bring to Potsdam a virtual who's who of the world's greatest percussionists to inspire, motivate, and teach all of us as students. It's indicative of the reverence with which we hold JP that so many of you percussion alumni chose to come back tonight to celebrate. And for me, along the way, JP morphed from being a teacher and a mentor to a colleague and became one of my oldest friends. So I'll stop there, but our next group will be the Alley Gals, featuring Elise Gage, Sarah Gilbert, Molly Jones, Austin LaMarche, Kylie Stenger, and Ashley Trudell. Hope you enjoy Tycho. In those early days, when we were in the old building, which is now Dunn Hall, Crane faculty and other folks fondly referred to JP's studio as Peter's Beaters. But after the move to New Crane about 1973, folks gradually began to call the studio Percussion Alley after the suite of rooms outside Hosmer Hall, where the percussionists and all of their equipment became their denizen. Later shortened to just the alley. And I know there's a lot of stuff down there. And the alley's probably been written up for more fire code violations than just about any area in Crane. But the last insult was when they made the fire department took the ramp out beside JP's office that we used to move timpani and chimes and other paraphernalia down to Hosmer Hall. And that's been really tough on the backs of the percussionists, but we still managed to go on. Over the years, many of you who know JP have been subjected to some of the corniest drummers' jokes of all times. So I'm going to reiterate a few of them. I'm sure many of you have heard this one. If you've ever been at a dinner with JP and a bunch of percussionists, he invariably passes the bread tray and says, "Have a roll. Every drummer should have one." And then, what do you call it when two or more drummers get together for a chat? A percussion discussion. And of course, you all know what the favorite household cleaner of a percussionist is. That would be janitor in a drum. And I don't know if they even make that product anymore, but it was funny at the time. After JP was appointed head of the percussion area at Crane, we affectionately called him Drumhead, and the pun was definitely intended. And one of my favorites, what are the 5 most commonly heard words by a drummer in a 3-piece suit? Would the defendant please rise? I particularly remember during the 125th anniversary in Crane in 2011, Crane sponsored a national symposium on music education. And the event started off with a performance by the percussion ensemble. And JP told me because they had the ensemble play because they wanted to start things off with a bang. So those are some of my favorites. I'm sure he'll tell you a lot more. We're almost ready for our next ensemble. And somewhere here I have my program. Next group call themselves the Southern Tier Percussion Ensemble with Chris Wengert as conductor and featuring Matt Christie, William Couture, Jay Lynch, Nicholas Middlebrook, and Michael Silliman. One of the things that I personally admired most about Jim Peterzak was always that he cared enough, and still does, about his students that on percussion ensemble tours, he made sure that we got to meet giants in the field of percussion. He was instrumental in helping his students make career-building connections while they were students and using his network to help students find the right jobs after graduation. And everybody knows that Jim is an incredibly connected individual. In 1973, for me, one of those experiences, after I completed my master's degree, I think I was about his first master's candidate, either myself or Alan Kaufman. Anyway, I was invited back to be the vibe soloist with the percussion ensemble at the Midwest Clinic. And as I looked out in the audience, there was jazz great Gary Burton dressed in a buckskin vest watching our performance. After I finished having my meltdown, I got to go out and meet Gary, thanks to Jim, and he was very supportive and complimentary. My friend Gary Hodges wrote on Facebook that one of his favorite memories from that particular tour was when JP arranged for us a tour of the Ludwig Drum Factory and introduced us to Bill Ludwig III and Armin Zildjian, among others. It was an amazing trip, especially the flight back. I think we had a 3-leg flight, and we were stopped in each location for snow, but we did finally make it back after spending 2 hours grounded in Syracuse. It was quite an amazing experience. If you've ever ridden with JP, his driving is legendary. And any of you who've driven with him can attest to that. He's probably talked his way out of more speeding tickets than anyone I know. But anyway, my favorite driving story dates back to 1969, and the percussion ensemble went to New York City to Columbia University to perform a Sandy Feldstein ensemble piece as part of his doctoral dissertation. My recollection is we loaded up at Old Crane loading ramp at about 6:30 a.m., and we pulled up out front of Columbia about 12 o'clock noon. And JP says that's not even his record. And a former student of mine at Norfolk related to me that he was riding with JP one time from Plattsburgh to Potsdam, and they were stopped on the old military turnpike. JP was in a hurry, and before the trooper could even get to the car, he rolled down his window and said, "Give me the ticket, give me the ticket." And my student Gary said, "The trooper let him off. Go figure." So our next ensemble, let me get my program again. The Long Island Percussion Ensemble, and we're featuring Stephen Campanella, Michael Caruso, Pete DeSalvo, Andrew Dwork, Jason Giacchetti, John Letty, and Michael Silliman. As I mentioned before, I don't think there's anybody else in this field that knows more about percussion ensemble literature than Jim Peterzak. And he studied with one of the greats, Paul Price, at Manhattan School of Music, who was also a marvelous educator and a terrific and knowledgeable percussionist, and someone who knows percussion ensemble music. And those of you who have been around knows that the Crane Percussion Ensemble rehearses every Saturday morning, and more than a few students over the years can remember dragging themselves out of bed after a rough Friday night downtown to get to rehearsal to avoid the wrath of JP. And we all knew you had better come prepared. Scott McGovern, a.k.a. Schwartz, wrote on Facebook, "Our Saturday rehearsals came with hats and sunglasses to block the light. It was just too darn bright in C-119." Of course, percussion music can be some of the most rhythmically intricate music in existence, and it didn't always go as planned. Mike Benedict shared a story on Facebook. The percussion ensemble did a concert off campus somewhere. I believe it was at a high school. I don't remember the piece, but things were not going well. And we could sense that JP was getting angry. All of a sudden he said, "Roll." He said it a couple more times, "Roll," and then we all knew what he meant. We all started rolling on whatever instrument we were playing on. We followed him, soft, loud, slow, fast, etc., until we ended with a giant crescendo and a giant bang to end the piece. The audience went wild, thinking that we were actually playing the piece as written. And as we departed the stage, he had a few choice words for us. One of the things we all learned about was stage decor with JP. He taught us how to bow, and everyone knows that JP unfailingly and uniquely acknowledges each player after every ensemble piece with their own personal bow. And who can forget the ensemble's rendition of Jesus Christ Superstar for 20 percussionists, drum set, and bass. Jeff Snow remembered the one time that JP decided to sing through the entire JC medley in masterclass. And you haven't lived until you've heard JP sing your ensemble part. It's truly an amazing experience. John Bird reminded us that JP would always say, "Okay, everyone, trickle on," for us to enter. And John still uses that with his own students. From Jack Jennings, my first ensemble rehearsal on a Saturday morning, JP walks in, starts Three Brothers, and a couple of guys weren't ready. He yells, "This ain't Fredonia." Then he smiled, adjusted his glasses in his special way, and away we went. And as Jack says, I've never been able to take a Fredonia grad seriously since. I do have to apologize to my Fredonia friends out there because I have a lot of friends from Fredonia. Incidentally, that last piece was written by Murray Huliff, who is also an alum of the Crane Percussion Ensemble in Crane, marvelous composer for percussion. And this next piece, Three Brothers, is probably one of Jim's favorite and one of my favorite. I think maybe my name is still on the timpani part somewhere from about 50 years ago. A wonderful piece by Michael Colgrass. And next we're going to hear from the actual upstate percussion ensemble, John Bird as conductor, and featuring Chris Caperso, Mike Sermo, Mike Gentile, Joe Geraci, Jack Jennings, Tom Murphy, Matthew McGrath, Kyle Peters, and Jay Sager. Hope you enjoy Three Brothers. As many of you know, Jim Peterzak has been the recipient of many awards over the years. He was one of the early presidents of the Percussive Arts Society. He was president from 1977 to 1981. In 2003, PAS honored him with its Lifetime Achievement Award. As Dean Sitton said, Jim Peterzak is one of SUNY's distinguished teaching professors. In 2003, SUNY Potsdam awarded him a Lifetime Membership Award. And in 2010, he was honored from his alma mater, the Manhattan School of Music, with a Distinguished Alumni Award. Jim was also a prime mover in the establishment of the Crane Institute for Music Business and has been an amazing prime fundraiser for the program. He's brought in a tremendous amount of music and money to that program. I have a funny story. In the mid-1970s, I invited JP to be a guest soloist on my concert at Norwood Norfolk, where I was teaching at the time. He was going to be playing a drum set solo with band on a crossover piece written by the great Don Sebesky. Those were the days of leisure suits, and Jim was wearing one, a beige one, with a Hawaiian shirt on, and I think he had some beads on and maybe some fashionably long hair. But I remember the last number before the intermission, a bat flew into the auditorium and started terrorizing just about every woman in the audience. Now, JP doesn't like bats, And when I left the stage, I heard in the hall, "I'm not going out there. No way, I'm not going out there." So we eventually corralled the bat behind the curtain, and I sent my first trumpet player back there with an extended Manhasset stand. A couple of minutes later, you heard this whack, some wings fluttering, and the show went on as planned, and JP was absolutely amazing. In the 70s and 80s, some of you may remember that JP played in a quartet called the New Review. It featured our wind ensemble conductor here, Tony Maiello, Wally Siebel, the proprietor of Northern Music, jazz vocalist Kiki Britt, I think Kiki's here tonight, and then later on, Angela Jesse. I remember that group played for my brother's wedding and also performed at many college events. I'm sure Kiki'd be happy to share many of those stories with you later on, being on the road with a New Review. And I got to play many weddings with Jim over the years in my role as a piano player. And I really liked playing with Jim because he always made sure that the musicians in the band got to hit the buffet line even before the bride and groom. Lots and lots of fun playing with JP. Our next we have Beautiful Love, and I think that's what's up next, right? And a Victor Young arrangement by Nick Mancini, 1973. Quick personal story. I was fortunate to go to NAMM a few years back, and I was there with Kiki Britt and JP, and we all decided to have dinner at the Convention Center restaurant. So we went up to the door and talked to the maitre d', and he said there would be a 2-hour wait before we could get in. JP waved two $20 bills under his nose, and 10 minutes later we were ordering from the menu. Thanks, JP. Daryl Redmond is here tonight. I chatted with Daryl a little bit earlier, and I reminded him that when I first came back to Crane to teach, one of my first assignments was monitoring instrumental practicum at campus school, where I assigned Crane students to teach beginners. And one of those beginners was a 4th grader named James Peterzak. I assigned Daryl as James's teacher, and I told him he better not blow it. Daryl said the first time he saw James pick up the sticks, he could tell it was JP's son. On the issue of retirement, many people have asked JP when he was going to retire. And one would have to ask, after 50 years, when is he really going to retire? Many of us who were JP's students, myself included, have already retired, and yet JP is still on the job. So many people have asked JP about retirement, and they've received a variety of answers. Rich Hawley said, since around 1998, he's been saying every year, "I'm going to teach 2 more years and that'll be it." Rich says, "I don't see him ever retiring." Catherine Mounier wrote on Facebook, "I don't think retirement is in the air. It's a renewable 5 years, more likely." Chris Demby-Iotis wrote, "I had the chance to go to NAMM in 2007. I saw JP at the Sabian booth. After a few minutes of catching up on chit-chat, I asked him, 'So, it's getting to be almost 40 years at Crane. Thinking of retiring soon?' He replied, 'I'm not thinking about that. If John Beck from Eastman can retire at 75, I can retire at 75. And this is one of my favorites. About 2005, I was the Master of Ceremonies at the Crane Retirement Dinner for Ann Keenan. And the dean asked JP, "Hey, Jim, when are you going to retire?" And without missing a beat, JP shouted back, "2 more deans." And Dean Sitton knows that story, too. So I would not count on Jim retiring any too soon. I don't know what the actual SUNY longevity record is for a faculty member, but I've got a good idea JP has an eye on it. So our next ensemble is called Percussion Alchemy. It features Tom Marceau and Rob Sanderl on a piece called My Beautiful Chaos. Very nice piece by Tom Marceau. A lot of folks have written in on social media, have sent in many testaments to JP. and many others who wanted to be remembered to JP tonight. James Abate, I'm probably messing his name up, but he shared, Crane School of Music in the Percussion Alley was one of the biggest highlights of my life. Looking back, I was a very green student. However, the knowledge that JP gave me with the rest of my peers from the Percussion Alley has made me a more transparent person, musician, and teacher since then. If I was able to do it all over again at Crane, I would do it in a heartbeat. Thanks, JP, and the Crane School of Music. My classmate, Bruce Rogers, spent 3 years in the West Point band after he graduated, but hasn't held a pair of drumsticks since 1982. And he wrote in, "Okay, Ashley, I found some drumsticks and a picture of how I'm supposed to hold them." So you can look for Bruce and me in the very back row on the Downfall of Paris. I think we have the honor of being the oldest alumni here tonight. Mike Misma wrote in, "I remember in my freshman year I was about to go on stage to play my first xylophone solo in my collegiate career with marimba band. I'm pacing around backstage intensely as things are being set up. Right before I go on, Mr. Peterzak barks out, 'Hey, Misma.' So I walk quickly over to him thinking that he's about to lay down some serious performance insight, some major truth bomb that would clarify all things musical for me. Right then and there, he says, 'Don't screw up.'" So although I was a bit startled at the moment, when I think back to that experience, I have to admit it was the perfect thing for me to hear. So let's talk a little bit about JP's office. When he arrived on the scene in 1968, of course, Crane was located over in Dunn Hall, but since 1973, JP's office has been in a 20 by 20 windowless box-shaped cave somewhere behind C-119. His office can best be described as a cross between a museum, a landfill, and maybe a black hole. Each year, it gets more cluttered. To his current students, you would be surprised to know that there used to be a set of 4 timpani in there, too. And to all of you Alley alums, you won't be surprised to know that the pathways in that 45-year-old carpet in his office are worn even deeper, the stacks of music are piled even higher, and there are even more relics of posters and bygone percussion ensembles on the walls. And yes, JP still knows where every single item is. Next, we're going to have the Capital Region Percussion Ensemble featuring Mike Christie, Jim Cirillo, Alyssa Falk-Verheyen, Dan Gleason, and Cynthia Szymanski-Lee, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. John Bird confessed on Facebook, "JP, I remember when I borrowed your crash cymbals from under the desk for Carmina Burana. He inverted them in rehearsal, and he never touched them again after that." Jeff Reimer was one of my high school students from Norwood, Norfolk. He lived on a farm out in Norfolk, and he wrote in, I think Jeff is here tonight, "So who currently drives JP to the Montreal airport, and who brings him fresh eggs?" They called Jeff the Eggman while he was in Crane, and he's here tonight. Jeff is now one of the leading piano technicians in the Rochester area. The great Roy Burns is a long-term friend of Jim Peterzak, and Roy made regular appearances in Potsdam in the 1970s and 80s, as did drum legend Louis Belson. JP collaborated on a book with Louis, and I particularly remember an epic drum battle that JP and Louis participated in here in the early 80s. It was really an amazing night. Anybody remember that here? Anybody back here from that time? Probably not. During his career, JP crossed paths with many of the drum legends. Steve Campanella sent this recollection. "Okay, so I'm a freshman. I'm living in Bowman with fellow alley man Brandon Sweet. I'm in my room and we're watching Brandon's collection of drumming instructional videos. As I'm going through the Dave Weckl Back to Basics instructional video, I hear Dave mention, 'This is a technique that a man named Mr. James Peterzak taught me.' In my next lesson, I asked him, 'Did you teach Weckl?' His response, 'Dave? Oh yeah, Dave. I taught Dave, Vinny, Steve Gadd. All those guys call me from time to time for lessons. As I sat stammering, he said, "Okay, now Podemski." It didn't go well. Steve Lundeen couldn't be here tonight, and he writes, "Congratulations on 50 years at Crane, JP. Your commitment to excellence and your legacy at Crane are both remarkable and inspirational. I'm sorry I can't be there in person to celebrate today, but I know you'll be proud that I'm not here because I'm on the road with my group, the DeKalb High School Percussion Ensemble. We are participating in the Sandy Felstein Music for All National Percussion Festival this weekend. Our participation in that event is really a direct result of the impact you have had on my life and now in turn on your great students in DeKalb, Illinois. Thank you for pushing me to realize my potential and offering great advice about our profession and life. Congratulations." And this one from Adam Conforti. "JP, I want to thank you for giving me purpose. When I was a freshman, I had little confidence in my percussion skills and I felt like I didn't belong at Crane. You instilled the confidence in me to grow and not to be afraid of making a mistake. You were a great mentor, and I cannot thank you enough for everything you've done for me. Congratulations on 50 years, JP. I'm sorry I could not be here on your special day. Thanks for everything." And Mario Gaetano regrets that he could not be here this evening to celebrate Jim's monumental achievement. He's performing this weekend with the Asheville Symphony. Mario was a 1977 graduate of Crane and went on to earn a doctorate in percussion performance and taught at Western Carolina for 38 years, recently retired. Mario wants to thank Jim for his great teaching, his great mentorship, his great friendship, and his absolutely great support over the past 40 years. None of us could have succeeded without his professional guidance. I wish Jim many more productive years, and I hope to see many of you on this year's PASIC. And next we have Pieces for Wood by the Abraxas Percussion Quartet with special guest James A. Peterzak. And we're going to feature on this Michael Doc Benedict and Gary France, who, by the way, Gary came from the farthest away. He's here tonight from Australia. And also we're featuring Rich Hawley and Kevin Moran. And this is a reunion for the Abraxas Percussion Quartet. Hope you welcome them. We're coming to the end. Before we play the Downfall of Paris with 1,000 drummers, we had to call over to Stoll Hall and have them turn off the seismology machine. We didn't want to damage it. We'll all be deaf in about 10 minutes. This has been a very special evening. And before the evening comes to an end, I would be very remiss not to express our appreciation to the two folks that have really been working hard on this anniversary concert and reunion for more than a year now. Our special thanks go to John Bird and especially to Ashley Trudell for all of her work in putting this amazing event together. She first established I know she first established the Facebook page presence about 15 months ago, I think, and organizing and coordinating this event has been a monumental amount of work. JP is so very important to all of us, and he certainly deserves this wonderful honor, and I'm glad it could happen. This has been a once-in-a-life opportunity for 50 years of percussion students and former graduates to get together, to pay tribute, reconnect, and meet those who are members of this very special club. Mike Benedict wrote, "Ashley, you deserve an honorary doctorate." And James A. Peterzak also wrote, "Ashley is the best. She's the one who keeps my dad in line at Crane, too." And that's worthy of a second honorary doctorate in itself. So I'd like to invite John and Ashley to come out on the stage now. And now I'd like to invite Dean Michael Sitton to come back to the stage for a very special event.
So I have one more thing to do tonight besides reminding all the percussion alumni and current percussion students to come on stage after the final piece for a picture. What I'm doing now is on behalf of New York State Senator Joe Griffo, who regretted that he could not be here tonight to make a presentation in person because he had a conflicting event. But we're grateful to Senator Griffo for his effort to make this possible. And I'd like to ask Professor Peterzak to come down and join me. What I have here is a legislative resolution from the New York State Senate, adopted on February the 6th, 2019. Things like this, as you can probably see, have a lot of legislative language with numerous whereases and so on. And I'm not going to read all of them, but in brief, it begins by stating its intention to honor James Peterzak, quote, upon the occasion of his designation for special recognition after 50 years of distinguished service to the Crane School of Music. Among the citations of the resolution are these, quote, a significant contributor to education in New York State, Jim Peterzak clearly has an enduring impact on the students of the Crane School of Music, as well as on the community at large. Many of his students have gone on to hold professional positions in colleges, public schools, and in leading orchestras and ensembles throughout the world. In addition to his esteemed 50-year career with the Crane School of Music, Jim Peterzak is a Yamaha Sabian performing artist, and throughout this career thus far, Jim Peterzak has brought an uncompromising standard of excellence to his work and a warm sense of caring and concern to every student he educates. Therefore, be it resolved that this legislative body pause in its deliberations to honor James Peterzak upon the occasion of his designation for special recognition after 50 years of distinguished service to the Crane School of Music. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Wow. Well, I'm not one for all this formal stuff, but this looks like pretty important with all those words on it. Really pretty. And I want to thank Joe Griffo did that. I want to thank Joe Griffo. He's our senator, and that's really special. I don't have a lot of words to say. I believe in live performance speaking for itself, and I think what we heard tonight says it all. There's not much to say. We have a bunch of talented people who are part of the Crane family. They're alums, and we have a lot of Crane people here who are going to be alums in the near future. And I think when we talk about institutions, we know that they're bigger than people, but the people make the institution. And all these, I call them kids, and I'm happy. Matter of fact, I don't even want them to leave because it's just happy time to see them all and to hear them play again. But you know, they all left a little piece of themselves in the building, in the practice rooms, in the classrooms, on stage like they did tonight, and they've done that for a long time. And I think the people that performed, the people that came to visit with us this weekend, not only makes it special, but it tells you what music's all about. It's the people. It's playing for people. It's people enjoying what we do. We work hard, but you give us a lot of pleasure at the same time. So I'm glad you're here to participate in this. It's a very special day for me. It couldn't happen without the support of Michael Sitton, who's our outstanding dean, who allows us to reach for the stars here and do what we have to do, and he supports us 100%. And also with this administration that we have, I saw Provost Betty Bergeron, and I think Kristen Esterberg, my president, my favorite one over there. She knows that too. And they've supported us not only for what we do here at Crane, but they've supported the students who are also participating to become people in executives and new entrepreneurs themselves in the music business. And I really applaud them for that, for allowing the students to grow here so they can become like these kids. And so without further ado, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'll leave you with a great thing. In the late 60s, I was in Vienna, and there was a fellow by the name of Richard Hochreiner, a famous timpanist from the Philharmonic and teaching at the conservatory, met us at the airport, took us in for a whole week and showed us all around the town. And we did some playing at the university, and about 5 or 6 years later, I had the opportunity to put him into the PAS Hall of Fame and give him his award in New York City at one of our conventions. And he came in, his speech at that particular time was, "What a wonderful life to be a drummer." And I'm going to steal it. And I'm going to tell you what a wonderful life to be a drummer, wonderful life to be a musician, and a wonderful life to be a professor at the Crane School of Music at SUNY Potsdam. I thank you.